Okay, today what we're going to do is we're going to look at a topic that you're probably very familiar with. I know that you've seen it many times before, but that doesn't always mean that you know exactly how to use it, right? So what we're going to do is do a review of what's called the order of operations. In mathematics, there are only 4 operations: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But you have to understand when to do each one if you want to get the correct answer. You can't just do anything you want to in any order you want to. So to help you, with the order of operations has been defined and organized so that you can always get the correct answer if you follow it. Okay? So what we're going to do is look at, first, a mnemonic device to be able to help you remember it. And you've seen this before, I'm sure. It's BEDMAS. Okay? And we're going to be talking about each one of those pieces and how to use them. But it's critical that you understand the abbreviation BEDMAS so that you will know what to do when. The B stands for brackets, which tells you that you're always going to be dealing with any brackets first. Before you do anything else, you'll deal with the brackets. Now, brackets have their own order of operations, so we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay? The E stands for exponents, or also known here as indices, also known as powers. Lots of different words that explain exponents. And we'll talk about exponential notation and how to work with those as well. That has some processes that we need to talk about too. The D and the M, D stands for division. M stands for multiplication. And it's a little misleading that the D comes before the M because in reality, division and multiplication are equals. Okay? Right? And so as equals, what you're going to do is you're going to just deal with them from left to the right. Just like you would read words on a page. So if you come to division first, then you would do division first. But if you come to multiplication first, you would do the multiplication first. Okay? So they just put it in this order because it makes something of a word, BEDMAS, although it's not a very good word. All right? Then, A stands for addition. And S, of course, is subtraction. And just like multiplication and division, these are equals, so you'll do them from left to right. Now remember, now we're just getting the notes down, but when we meet in class, you'll be able to look at examples of how each one of these work. Okay? So at this point, all I want you to do is know which one's which, and then we'll look at examples together in class. Okay? Now, but I do want to talk about the brackets and exponents a little bit more so that you'll be prepared for dealing with those when we do the classwork. So let's look at brackets first. Now, brackets can be very complicated, and they'll get more complicated as you move forward in your mathematical career. But for now, what you need to recognize about brackets, okay, is that there are 3 steps to eliminate a bracket. And that's our goal, is to get rid of it, to simplify it. Eliminate or simplify, perhaps. Might be a nice word. If you're not used to that word simplify, that's kind of the catch-all phrase that means do the math. Right? If you see simplify, that means do everything you can. Okay? Using, of course, the order of operations. The first place you look when you're dealing with a bracket is on the inside of the bracket. Okay? If there's anything you can do inside, you need to do that first. You might have some multiplication or addition or subtraction, whatever. And again, you'd follow the order of operations even inside a bracket. And we'll look at some examples of that when we meet again in class. Right? The second thing you look for is an exponent on the bracket. And we'll be talking about exponents in a moment, so you'll see what to do. Now this means an exponent on the bracket, that means you're going to have an exponent that's sitting right against that set of brackets. It's not inside, you would have already done that, right? It's on the outside of the bracket. And then finally, the third thing, and I'm going to use a math word here that you need to learn. If you may already know it, it's something called the coefficient. Now, I'm going to be introducing you to this terminology because we're going to be using it. This is algebraic terminology, but you're going to be doing a lot of algebra. That's our goal, is to get you to being ready for algebra. And a coefficient is just a fancy word for a multiplier. It can be anything. It can be a number. Later in algebra, it can be a letter. It could even be another bracket later on when you're working, not yet, but later. And a coefficient, we'll always know it's a coefficient because it'll be some number that's right in front of the parentheses. There can never be a symbol between them if it's the coefficient. Unless, of course, sometimes they want to really enforce the fact that it's a multiplier. They may put a multiplication symbol there. But most of the time, it's just a number right next to a bracket. And so we can assume that if you have a number right next to a bracket, it always indicates multiply. I'm sorry, I'm being very bad. Those should be on the example side, shouldn't they? Sorry. Okay, but it's all right if you didn't put them there this time. We'll all learn together, okay? We all make mistakes, don't we? Okay. Now, so that's how to deal with brackets. And again, we're going to look at lots of examples. We're going to do some together in class, and you're going to be doing some on your own in class, so you'll get to be very familiar with them. And the next thing that I just want to remind you of are how to deal with the exponents. And again, exponents have lots of different names, and you need to be familiar with all of them, because if you're not, then you're not going to understand when to do what, yeah? So be sure that you're very familiar with all of the names for exponents. Exponents are also called indices, or index is the singular, indices is the plural, right? And powers, or a power. And we're going to be dealing mainly with just two indices, or two exponents in this course that you need to be familiar with, but the rules are the same for all of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this in what's called general form. General form means I'm going to use letters from the alphabet to represent numbers. Okay? So we're going to write A and then put a little n next to it like this. This is what exponential notation looks like. Now, for an example, using numbers, we could write 4 to the second power. Right? So do you see that it's a number, and there's another little number floating up there right above it on the right-hand side, right next to it on the right-hand side. Notice that they're right next to each other. Yeah? So don't write it too far off. Don't write it big so that it looks like 42. Okay? Be careful with your notation. Neatness is a huge benefit in mathematics. And in this case, the A is something called the base of the exponent. Now, if you think of something that's the base, in other words, that's what everything is revolving around, right? It's the foundation of the exponent. And the base is the part that is being multiplied. Exponential notation is just another way of writing multiplication. But in exponential notation, you're multiplying by the same thing over and over and over again. And n is the exponent or index or power. Now, that's the last time I'm writing all three. From this point forward, you need to be familiar with the fact that an exponent or an index or a power always means the same thing. Okay? And it's just different times where it just sounds better to say one instead of the other. You can always use any of them. It doesn't make any difference. And that exponent tells you how many times to multiply. the base times itself. Now remember, the base is the thing that's being multiplied. You do not multiply the base times the exponent. That's a bad thing. But what you're going to do is you're going to multiply the base. So going back to our example, 4 to the second power literally means 4 times itself. Oops, sorry, I'll use the x for multiplication. I will too for now anyway. At times itself 2 times. So 4 to the second power literally means 4 times itself twice. Right? And if you change the exponent, that just means you're going to change how many times you multiply the 4, right? And of course, 4 times 4 is going to give you 16. Let's say we had 4 to the third power. Okay? The base of the exponent is the 4. The exponent is a 3. So that means we're multiplying the 4 times itself 3 times. Okay? So 4 times 4 is 16, times another 4 would give you 64. Okay? And if you had an exponent of 5, that means you just multiply the base times itself 5 times. Okay? But it's always base times itself. All right? So those are the notes. Those are the processes and the things that we're going to be doing in class. So I look forward to seeing you there, and we will do some math together.